Hi, Erik. Linask here at Interop in Las Vegas, talking with Greg Ness from Infoblox. Greg, thanks for joining me.
Hey, great to be here.
Start off. Tell me what Infoblox has been up to.
So, Infoblox automates network infrastructure. So, generally, when people think of infrastructure, they think of switches and routers, which every 3 to 5 years goes through a refresh. But what we automate is the core network services of that infrastructure: the IPAM, the DNS, the DHCP. And the great irony is that while networks were out automating a lot of business services, the very way that the networks are managed at the core infrastructure hasn't fundamentally changed for decades. So while network engineers, network pros help to build supply chains, build real-time, manufacturing, et cetera, just in time, they're managing the networks the same way they did decades ago. And so Infoblox is about, boosting the availability of networks, reducing the cost, increasing the flexibility, in the same way that VMware approached servers, right? So rising management costs, problems, more and more servers. Less was hardware cost as a proportion. Management costs grew. And we see the same thing in networks. As they get larger and more complex, the cost to manage each individual unit goes up. And so we're all about reducing that cost, increasing the availability of the network by reducing errors, and allowing the network pros to manage larger or more complex networks.
And so you talked about a little bit about what most people think of when you talk about network infrastructure and the network elements that Infoblox touches on. So how do you relate back to those other elements, the switches and the routers?
So we look at the IP address space. And so I think the best example is to say that when CFOs got systems like Oracle, they start getting real-time visibility in the health of their business. We help CIOs and people based on their roles to get visibility into the state of their network infrastructure, their IP address space, what's managed, what's unmanaged, conflicts, problems, and make changes to that infrastructure very quickly relative to the old world of scripts, configurations, where changes can take hours, if not weeks, and I've heard of where changes can sometimes take even months at large, complex networks. So we help that process take place in seconds, if not minutes. So networks become more flexible, there's fewer errors, and the pros are a lot more productive.
So effectively, it's about addressing the same types of issues that all IT and communications organizations are looking to do. Lower costs, increase efficiency, boost productivity, higher quality.
Yeah, we have one of our early customers from 9 or 10 years ago. They had 6 people managing the DNS infrastructure of their company. Now they have 1, and those 5 people helped to build an e-commerce infrastructure that generates about $1 billion in revenue. So they didn't have to go outside. They took people that were doing routine manual tasks and experiencing delays, committees, and stuff, and they helped to grow the business by $1 billion a year by being more strategic in their role. So we help the pros manage ever larger, more complex networks to stay up. We help the network directors make their networks more powerful, more available, more strategic, and we help the CIOs make their business, more powerful, right? By leveraging the network better.
From Infoblox's perspective, what are the biggest trends that are impacting what you're doing?
That's a great question. Padme Warrior in March, just a few weeks ago, was quoted saying that there's going to be more than 1 trillion devices connected to the network by 2013.
Right.
That's huge for us because that means networks are going to get larger, more complicated, and the average person that maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago had a single IP address, they might not only have multiple devices from the iPads, the iPhones, and laptops, et cetera, but we're also going to see medical devices. We're going to see things connected to the network that never were before. And that person who instead might have had 1 IP address, maybe 2, their IP addresses and the devices they use might look more like a multiplication table. So for the network pros to keep up with that, they're going to have to automate. There's no other choice. And that's where our business is picking up and very strong because the pressures for automation are building. And people are talking about cloud computing and virtualization. Again, more change, more dynamic pressures. And if IT in the enterprise is going to survive, they're going to have to automate. The same old manual processes that worked 5 or 10 years ago are just not, they're going to crumble today. and they'll pay for it in terms of increased cost of their network, more outages, and they're not going to have enough people to throw at the problem because there's fewer people graduating in computer sciences to begin with. So they're really, I mean, our business is driven by this core realization that if we don't automate the network infrastructure, we can't automate the network, and we can't automate our IT infrastructure if we can't automate the network.
What about the increasing move towards wireless in enterprises? Does that
most certainly, and you know, I think back to the 1940s and 50s with, you know, the telephone operators that knew the names of everybody they were connecting, right? Enterprise networks started out like that. And you can imagine if those operators were around today and you had your cell phone and you're driving down wherever you live in Los Angeles down the highway and you're moving from tower to tower and somebody's having to manually keep up with where you're going, that would be a catastrophe today for the service providers. But fortunately, decades ago, they started investing in automation. And so those operators who were like the network people today, making sure that everyone stayed connected, were replaced by automation, and now you have higher level people managing these larger and keeping up with the change. So cellular and VoIP are drivers of our business. Virtualization's a driver of our business. Again, more VMs that are managed on the server side, more change. And then just the core evolution of the network being connected to more and more things like smart grid. All these roads lead to the automation of the infrastructure, and it's about time.
Good. Been talking here with Greg Ness from Infoblox here at Interop in Las Vegas. Greg, thanks for joining me.
Hey, thank you, Eric. Good talking to you.